So good evening. My name is Joe Miniacci. I am the Regional Administrator for the FAA's Central Region. We're located right here in Kansas City. We're very pleased you're able to join us for our virtual public information workshop today. We're going to be talking about the arrival procedures at the Kansas City International Airport. The FAA is in the process of modernizing the national airspace. What we're doing is we're using satellite-based navigation as a primary method of directing traffic. It's going to be replacing the conventional system, and that does include some ground-based navigational aids. So why are we telling you this? Well, the satellite procedures are extremely precise. Now this gives the controllers and the pilots greater situational awareness, which really enhances the already safest system in the world. It also allows for enhanced route planning. And that means kind of just something for you, actually, that the passengers are going to see reduced delays at time of departure. Anybody that's been in a long line knows what that's like. And you're going to see reduced flying time to your destinations. So an added benefit from the reduced flying time is going to be there's less fuel burn, and less fuel burn means less carbon emissions. So that's one of the real benefits of this. So today we're going to walk you through this new system and how it compares to the one being replaced, and explain how each flight path and the flight experience is different. We're going to focus on arrivals, as we said, in the airspace around Kansas City, and what you might expect when these new procedures are introduced. Now we're going to show you two videos, and they detail these procedures, and I think you're going to find that these videos are interesting and very informative. Then we're going to go to a live panel question and answer with representatives from the FAA along with our industry partners to answer any questions on the operation of on arrival procedures in the airspace around Kansas City. So I hope that you find the information provided in the live Q&A provides value for you. I want to thank our panelists for being here today and sharing their perspective. And I also want to thank you very much for joining us today to learn about this new procedures.
Kansas City is at the heart of the nation, and soon visitors will have an easier time getting there. The FAA is amending and adding satellite-based air traffic procedures that will help travelers arrive and depart more efficiently than ever before. As part of a nationwide program, the FAA is updating arrival and departure flight procedures in order to better connect Kansas City with airports nationwide. This project is part of the FAA's nationwide strategy to modernize the entire national airspace system and meet the future demand at busy airports. Throughout the nation, the FAA has built a system that allows controllers to manage the safe and efficient flow of aircraft between airports. In the past, aircraft have flown point to point by passing over ground-based navigational aids. Many of these ground-based aids are now old, inefficient, and costly to maintain. The FAA is replacing them with satellite-based procedures. These new procedures allow pilots and controllers to use more direct routes, which can help the environment by reducing fuel burn, and are safer and more predictable paths that reduce workload for flight crews and air traffic controllers. More direct routes also reduce delays. Satellite-based procedures have been implemented in airports across the nation, including Kansas City. The retirement of 5 ground-based navigational aids means that Kansas City will implement satellite-based procedures starting in mid-2022. These paths will give pilots a more seamless approach into the airport. How does air traffic control work at Kansas City? Kansas City has 3 runways. There are 2 runways oriented from north to south, which are parallel to each other. The 3rd runway is a crosswind runway, running from east to west. Aircraft take off and land into the wind, and runways are built to align with historic wind patterns specific to each airport. At Kansas City, the prevailing winds are generally from the south, so aircraft take off and land to the south, which is called south flow. However, winds can come from the north or even the west, which will change the direction in which aircraft take off and land. General runway identification is based on the compass heading the aircraft is facing as it lands or takes off. For example, runway 927 is facing approximately 90 degrees in one direction and 270 degrees in the opposite direction. If you drop the 0 at the end of the compass heading, you will get 9 and 27. Even though a runway is a single strip of concrete, it is essentially treated as two separate surfaces. Parallel runways are further designated with L for left or R for right at the end of the runway number, which explains runways 1 right, 19 left, and 1 left, 19 right. Air traffic controllers work in three-dimensional space to keep planes safely separated horizontally and vertically. They continually space and separate arrivals and departures. Satellite-based procedures make that job safer and more efficient because the separation requirements can now be incorporated within the procedure, including speed and altitude and points along the route. These new arrival procedures are designed to be used by all runways. Why does Kansas City need these procedures? Passengers flying to and from Kansas City want to travel easily from other parts of the country. Satellite-based air traffic procedures will help Kansas City better connect with other larger airports, including Chicago, Denver, Minneapolis, Las Vegas, Atlanta, Los Angeles, and New York. One of the new procedures is called Optimized Profile Descents, or OPDs, which will allow aircraft to glide to the ground, eliminating powering up motions. The OPD has built-in speed and altitude requirements, which are programmed into the airplane's flight computers and allow the aircraft to essentially glide down on idle power. It's like driving a car from a highway to an exit ramp and then a neighborhood street, but seamlessly and without stopping. Placing an aircraft on a continuous and predictable path separates it from all other aircraft in the area. This kind of path is the safest and most efficient possible route. The new arrival procedures will take effect once aircraft have started descent from the cruise portion of the flight. They will provide stabilized descents, remove level-offs, and allow for near-idle approaches while keeping aircraft higher in the air as long as possible. Jet aircraft will follow the same general flight paths used today from the beginning of the descent to between 4,000 and 7,000 feet in altitude, depending on the runways in use. Speed and/or altitude assignments are built into the procedure instead of air traffic controllers issuing compass headings called vectors to separate arriving aircraft. Creating and publishing new flight procedures is a multi-step process. The FAA begins with a specific need, benefit, and purpose. A team of air traffic professionals, operators, airports, and other aviation stakeholders contribute to the design of a procedure. We hope this video gives you a basic understanding of how the air traffic control system works in the Kansas City airspace, and including how and why the FAA is modernizing air traffic procedures. For more information about this project, please visit the FAA's Community Involvement website at faa.gov.
Hello, my name is Marissa McQueen, and I'm an Air Traffic Control Support Specialist at the FAA's Kansas City International Airport Traffic Control Tower, or ATCT. I've been actively involved and air traffic within the Kansas City airspace for the last 12 years. Today, I will walk you through the poster boards for the arrival procedures at Kansas City. Each of the following boards shows a sampling of proposed approach procedures as well as existing flight tracks. Each board will show either arrival aircraft with current day tracks color-coded by altitude for the close-in view, or all blue flight tracks for the distant, zoomed-out view. The flight tracks and procedures are all overlaid on a map of our surrounding Kansas City area. Each flight procedure board is oriented with north facing up. The name of the flight procedure is on the top of the board. For example, this board shows 4 arrivals: the Jason, Rudd, Wu-Tang, and Mahomes. These are called STARS, or Standard Terminal Arrival Routes. A few acronyms are used by air traffic controllers explaining the boards and are defined in the text. The spelling of each arrival procedure is limited to 5 letters only. For example, the spelling of Rudd, R-U-D-D-H, is pronounced Rudd. The stars on the board are locations of waypoints, which are fixed navigational points in space that the aircraft fly to. Just as with the spelling of the procedures, waypoints are spelled with 5 letters. For example, the F-A-K-I-R waypoint would be pronounced Faker. The proposed arrival flight procedures are colored orange. Surrounding the paths are dispersed path areas in yellow. These areas show the possible locations where aircraft may fly and account for the possibility of different routing to avoid hazardous weather, for operational need, or for safety. When aircraft fly in these areas, it is typically due to a pilot receiving a compass heading from air traffic control. A compass heading is a vector assigned to an aircraft by an air traffic controller at the Kansas City International TRACON, which TRACON is our Terminal Radar Approach Control, or the Kansas City Airport Tower. The proposed arrival procedures will use satellites for guidance instead of ground-based navigational aids. The FAA is retiring some older, inefficient navigational aids as part of its VOR MON project, which stands for VOR Minimum Operational Network. This is being done throughout the entire country. The bullet points on the right side provide additional details about the procedures. Next, we'll take a look at each arrival board. So this is the runway 1 left, 1 right, zoomed out. This board shows a zoomed out view of the existing flight tracks and proposed stars for aircraft landing to the north on runways 1 left and 1 right. Aircraft landing to the north will join one of these 4 stars depending on the direction they're coming from. Once on the star, controllers may either give the pilot a vector to the final approach or fly the entire procedure and would be issued the Rnav approach. An Rnav procedure uses satellite navigation to provide a precise flight path. Arrivals may be vectored off the procedure for operational need, safety, or for hazardous weather. Aircraft that are vectored are given a different heading to fly than the published procedures. However, controllers would use these arrivals as published whenever air traffic conditions allow. This is the runway 1 left, 1 right zoomed in. This board shows a zoomed in view of the existing flight tracks and proposed stars for aircraft landing to the north on runways 1 left and 1 right. This view shows how the star in orange connects to the required performance navigation, or Rnp approach, which is in teal. The Rnp approach also uses satellites for navigation and provides pilots precise guidance for landing. Aircraft landing at Kansas City that have authorized equipment on board already use these Rnp approach procedures. The graphic in the lower left-hand corner shows the existing color-coded radar track legend. This is the runway 19 left, 19 right zoomed out board. This board shows the zoomed out view of the existing flight tracks and proposed stars for aircraft landing to the south on runways 19 left and 19 right. Aircraft landing to the south will join one of these 4 stars depending on the direction they're coming from. Once on the star, controllers once again may either give the pilot a vector to the final approach or fly the entire procedure and would be issued the Rnav approach. Arrivals may be vectored off the procedure for operational need, safety, or hazardous weather. Aircraft that are vectored are given a different heading to fly than the published procedure. However, controllers would use these arrivals as published whenever air traffic conditions allow. This is the runway 19 left, runway 19 right, zoomed in. This board shows the zoomed in view of the existing flight tracks and proposed stars for aircraft landing to the south on runways 19 left and 19 right at Kansas City. This view shows how the star in orange connects to the required performance navigation, or Rnp approach, in teal. The approach also uses satellites for navigation and provides pilots precise guidance for landing. Aircraft landing at Kansas City that have authorized equipment on board already use these Rnp approach procedures. The graphic in the lower left-hand corner shows the existing color-coded radar tracks legend. Runway 9 zoomed out board. This board shows the zoomed out view of the existing flight tracks and proposed stars for aircraft landing to the east on runway 9. At Kansas City, aircraft use runway 9 when winds come from the east. It is used much less frequently than the north-south parallel runways. Aircraft landing to the east will join one of these 4 stars depending on the direction they're coming from. Aircraft coming from the northeast or southeast will join the star, fly parallel to the runway, then make a U-turn to join the final approach. Once on the star, controllers may either give the pilot a vector to the final approach or fly the entire procedure and would be issued the Rnav approach. Once again, arrivals may be vectored off the procedure for operational need, safety, or for hazardous weather. Aircraft that are vectored are given a different heading to fly than the published procedure. However, controllers would use these arrivals as published whenever air traffic conditions allow. This is the runway 9 zoomed in board. This board shows a zoomed in view of the existing flight tracks and proposed stars for aircraft landing to the east on runway 9. This view shows how the star, in orange, connects to the required performance navigation, or Rnp approach, which is in teal. The approach also uses satellites for navigation and provides pilots precise guidance for landing. Aircraft landing at Kansas City that have authorized equipment on board already use these Rnp approach procedures. The graphic in the lower left-hand corner shows the existing color-coded radar tracks legend. This is the runway 27 zoomed out board. This board shows a zoomed out view of the existing flight tracks and proposed stars for aircraft landing to the west on runway 27. At Kansas City, aircraft use runway 27 when winds come from the west. It is used much less frequently than the north-south parallel runways. Aircraft landing to the west will join one of the 4 stars depending on the direction they're coming from. Aircraft coming from the northwest or southwest will join the star, fly parallel to the runway, then make a U-turn to join the final approach. Once on the star, controllers may either give the pilot compass headings, called a vector, to the final approach, or they'll fly the entire procedure and would be issued the Rnav approach. Arrivals may be vectored off the procedure for operational need, safety, or for hazardous weather. Aircraft that are vectored are given a different heading to fly than the published procedure. However, controllers would use these arrivals as published whenever air traffic conditions allow. Finally, this is the runway 27 zoomed in board. This board shows a zoomed in view of the existing flight tracks and proposed stars for aircraft landing to the west on runway 27. This view shows how the star, in orange, connects to the required performance navigation, or Rnp approach, in teal. The approach also uses satellites for navigation and provides pilots precise guidance for landing. Aircraft landing at Kansas City that have authorized equipment on board already use these Rnp approaches. The graphic in the lower left-hand corner shows the existing color-coded radar tracks legend. If you'd like to find out more information about Kansas City's arrival procedures, please visit our website.
Well, hello again. This is Joe Miniacci, and those who have just joined us, and I'm the Region Administrator for FAA Central Region. Thank you for participating in our virtual public workshop. And I'm going to be the moderator now for the community workshop and the questions and answers. So I'd like to cover a couple of things before we get started. And first is, if you're having any technical issues at all, we did put our number up. Let me tell you what it is again. It's 949-478-0253. This is a text number. So our tech support number, folks will be there. Call them anytime during the workshop. Again, this is text only. Secondly, we're going to be talking to you for about the next 60 minutes, and we'll take question and answers for that period of time. And finally, we are live streaming this on FAA's Facebook Live and the YouTube channel as well. So it is recorded. You'll be able to get on the YouTube channel when the workshop concludes and review it if you wish. So this is our last one. So the last for Kansas City. So you'd have to go to the channel to get any more information. First, now I would like to introduce our panelists who will take your questions. As I said, I'll be moderating though. But so first, I'm going to start with Ryan Gramp. Ryan is the manager of the Kansas City International Airport Terminal Radar Approach Control. Next is Casey Hovis. He's an air traffic control specialist at Kansas City International Airport Air Traffic Control. Marisa McQueen, you just saw her. She's a staff specialist at Kansas City International Airport at the control tower. Bill Brewer is an environmental protection specialist and has joined us as well. Trey Turner, he's a pilot from Southwest Airlines, is on board. And then Ian Redhead, the deputy director for the Kansas City Aviation Department, is also with us. So with that, I think we're going to be able to start our question and answers. And let me see if I get to our first question here. Well, actually, before we start, I want to go over one other thing. So we did have a workshop before yesterday. I did mention that. We had some questions that were really good in that workshop yesterday. So we are going to go over a couple of those questions that came in because they were submitted by the folks yesterday, and they're on Facebook, but I want to go over a couple of them anyway. So the first question we have today, though, is how has the FAA made changes like this in other airports? So, Marissa, could you take that one for us?
Sure. Joe, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay, awesome. So the FAA is moving away from ground-based navigation aids to satellite-based navigation aids. And all of the bigger facilities, all of the bigger airports in the country have made these changes already. So when you think of your New York airports, your Chicago's, your Atlanta's, LAX, even St. Louis, they've started the process of changing their procedures to satellite-based procedures. And so we're about a mid-tier airport, and we're in the middle of the process, and we're going to start to see those come through here at Kansas City.
Good. Thanks, Marissa. Another question is, when is this scheduled to start? Well, I believe it's going to be the summer of 22. You want to take that, anybody on the panel?
Joe, you're right. It'll be summer 2022 at some point. Don't have an exact date, but those will go into effect sometime this summer. Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Can these procedures be used in all types of weather? Do thunderstorms affect use of the procedure is the question. Casey, would you answer that, please?
Yeah, sure, Joe. These procedures are designed to be used in all types of weather. Thunderstorms can impact any type of procedure due to the activity of that storm. So if there's weather along an aircraft's route, either the pilot or ATC will preemptively just take them off that route, whether it's just for ride comfort, intense precipitation in the area. Pilots have already told us they don't want to go through that weather. We'll just preemptively take aircraft off. Trey might be able to expand on that part.
Sure, Casey. The procedures are usable in varying weather conditions, but Casey, to your point, there are conditions where we would want to be taken off the procedure for safety of flight and for our passengers' comfort in these instances. But as far as the design goes, and if our aircraft can receive the signals, they can. But like we said, we would get off the procedure to preserve passenger comfort and safety issues.
Yeah, thank you, guys. The next question that has come in is, how do aircraft use satellite procedures to navigate? How is this different from the ground navigation? Ryan, would you take that one as well?
Sure, Joe, thanks. And hello, everybody. Special hello to Carter and Camden. So in regards to this question itself, just like GPS technology in your vehicle, those require a line of sight technology, which just basically means, you have a line of sight from point A to point B. As you can imagine, as we talk about ground-based stuff, there's a lot of obstructions that can affect, that signal from point A to point B. Conversely, with satellites, you don't have that level of obstructions or stuff that's interrupting that signal from that point A to point B or that line of sight. So those are the big reasons why it's more beneficial for us.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. The following question is, the video stated that this isn't part of the new terminal project. When will the new terminal be open? Well, we have just a guy here for that. Ian?
Hey, Joe, thanks for inviting me. You're right. These new procedures have nothing to do with the new terminal project. The new terminal project is anticipated to be open in the first quarter of 2023, and we're all excited about that.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. Everybody's excited about that, I think. So the next question came in was, what does it mean when FAA states that these procedures are safer? Does that cover both passengers and people on the ground? That's an interesting question. Marissa, would you talk to that, please?
So I don't want anyone to think that our current procedures are not safe. We run the safest airspace in the world, and safety is our #1 priority for everyone involved in the FAA, from air traffic to even the people that write the procedures. So the procedures are more safe because they're more precise. Ryan talked about line of sight, and so we're just able to better pinpoint where the aircraft are and where they should be to make it more efficient. So they're safer in that, as Casey and Trey were saying earlier, these new satellite-based procedures are not affected by the weather, and that we still have great line of sight issues regardless of what type of weather is out there with the satellite-based procedures. So we're upgrading our technology to newer satellite technology.
Yeah, thanks, Marissa. And we're, by the way, we're just all very, very proud of the FAA's safety record, the safest system in the world. We might as well brag about that a little bit, right? The next question is, do these new procedures change how pilots will navigate to the airport? That's pretty interesting. Trey, you could answer that probably.
Sure, Joe. The short answer is no, they really don't. From our standpoint, it's flying just another instrument procedure that we're trained to do every day. What they offer that's unique from the pilot's seat is certain procedures, and which you saw on the boards incorporate radius to fixed turns, and built in. What you couldn't see on the board was that they build these procedures in with more efficiencies so that the airplanes descend closer to idle, if not completely at idle, for the duration of the arrival and most of the approach.
Thanks, Trey. The next question is, how is the FAA completing the environmental review to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act? Very interesting question. Bill, I'm glad you're here to answer something like that.
Thank you, Joe. The FAA, as part of the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA, reviewed potential environmental impacts associated with these proposed procedures. For this project, we completed a noise screen that showed no change in noise from the new procedures. We also evaluated numerous environmental categories called resources in our evaluation, such as air quality, environmental justice, and biological resources as examples.
Well, Bill, there's another question that came in that's going to be tagging on to the first one there. Can you explain the noise study and what's that process?
Yes, we looked at several factors during our noise study process. We factored in air traffic operations and fleet mix. We look at where the aircraft are currently flying, comparing to the new procedure or procedure change. We factor in runway usage as well as other factors. For this project, the noise screen does not show any change in noise from these procedures changes.
Well, that's good news. Okay, so can you describe the process that will occur after these workshops? Marissa, you took us through to start with. What's going to happen next?
Sure. So what the procedures are going through now is they're going through charting. And so a lot of different FAA offices have to look and make sure that everything is safe and the procedure will work on paper and that it looks correct. And then we'll have to do training here in-house for the air traffic controllers to ensure that they understand the procedures and where the aircraft are going to be. We'll have to have a flight check. So we'll have actual pilots come in an aircraft and test the procedures in an actual aircraft. So there are a few more steps that have to happen before we start using the procedures.
Okay, thank you. So people are interested in keeping up to date on the project. So question came in, how do I stay informed on what's happening with these procedures? Bill, can you, and Ryan as well, if you would.
Yes, the public workshops conducted yesterday and today will be recorded for future viewing from the community engagement webpage, which is found at faa.gov. Any updates to the materials will be found on that website. Again, once the procedures are implemented, you can contact the Kansas City Airport with your noise concerns or the FAA portal we have mentioned a few times.
I'm sorry, Ian, what's the airport? What's the airport thinking on this?
So unfortunately, we are not going to get away from potential noise impacts because you're still going to have planes flying over the airport and over in the neighborhoods. But as everybody has said, they're going to be more accurate in terms of the flight paths they take. If there are any noise complaints, as just mentioned by Bill, you would call the airport. And what we do is we look into any of the noise complaints and we work with the FAA to try and figure out what was the cause, if there was a deviation or anything like that. And then we get back to the person that called us, but you also can register your complaint on the FAA noise portal.
Thanks for reminding everybody of that, Ian. Just here's a question I think a lot of you might be interested in talking to. Will we see more aircraft because of these new procedures?
No, Joe, the procedures are not designed to increase air traffic. They're designed to provide a more precise and predictable path.
Yeah.
You could argue that they'll reduce pilot to controller communications. I mean, that might help us, but they were not specifically designed to increase the traffic. But, we're prepared to handle any level of traffic that comes our way, though.
I think Joe, as Casey said, the air traffic and the airspace above the airport is well designed to handle any of the traffic that's currently in here and also any increases in traffic. What we may hope is because of the new facility and people recognize that there's more than just good barbecue in Kansas City, maybe more and more airlines will start flying more and more people into the new facility to visit Kansas City as well. But any increase in the actual operations of aircraft will be in response to the demand and our good marketing by our marketing team to the airlines that shows that Kansas City is a place that people really want to come and visit.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I think from a pilot's point of view, with this new facility, it's going to be make it a little bit easier, isn't it? Or will it not?
Well, yeah, Joe, absolutely. To directly answer the question, will aircraft, will there be more aircraft because of the new procedures? Well, from our standpoint, that's more of a network question, but from the pilot seat, really what happens is that when these procedures are implemented and we enter the airspace, it effectively gets us on the ground quicker. And to Casey's point, utilizing less communication, and that way we can get to that barbecue quicker.
Don't blame anybody for that, right? So the next question is, are these procedures within the existing airspace, or did airspace need to be changed? Ryan, that's your department, I think.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so the stars that were developed are within the existing, what we call Class Bravo airspace. There's 6 different classes of airspace. We have a Class Bravo. I won't bore you with the intricacies of each and every one. They all have different requirements. But to answer the question, no airspace changes were needed or required to make this change.
That's pretty direct. Thank you very much. So if there is a noise complaint, how do I address that noise complaint? Ian?
Well, that hasn't changed either. If there's a noise complaint, you call the airport, and we will evaluate and identify the reason for the noise complaint. And then you can also call the FAA's website to register that complaint as well. They have a website that you can also use. But in terms of evaluating where the complaint was and why, you give our airport a call. We will work with the FAA and we will get an answer back to you whether there was a deviation or so, as Trey said, or Marissa said, and Casey, whether it's weather related or if there was something going on at the airport at the time, such as construction or any other thing like that. So we will investigate every one of those complaints we get.
Thanks, Ian. And those folks that are interested, they could go to faa.gov/noise. And there's a wealth of information there on this page about noise issues. If you want to just go take a look, I think you'll find it very, very informative. Next question is, what is the reason for this outreach? Well, let me just take a crack at that myself. The purpose is to give everybody, anybody that joins us, anybody that sees us on Facebook afterwards, an opportunity to see the new processes and procedures that are going in place and get your questions answered and talk to the panel. Or if you see it on Facebook or YouTube, you have a place to go for other issues and get your questions answered at faa.gov. We'll be more than happy to help you on any of those. Interesting question. What happens if the satellite is inoperable and NCI doesn't have any DMEs and or ILSs to guide in the aircraft? Right.
Thanks, Joe. So yeah, we have contingency plans to a multitude of equipment that we interact with every day. You know, as it relates to this particular piece of equipment going out, there's a redundancy to it. There's probably another redundancy and another redundancy after that. As it relates directly to not having any of the DME, the distance measuring equipment, or the ILSs, the instrument landing system, we would just revert back to basic air traffic, in which we use headings or what we call vectors to fall back on those if all that navigational equipment fails.
Thank you. So people are interested in more flights, apparently, and here's another question. Are these procedures being implemented so Kansas City can operate more flights? Well, the group has spoke to that already, but Ryan, Ian, you guys want to do that again?
Sure, Joe. I mean, the proposed procedure itself will not increase the demand. However, it will enable us to accommodate more flights coming in and out of here. We've designed the procedures to allow flights to move safely and more efficiently through Kansas City's airspace. The airspace itself was designed 30 years ago to accommodate, a higher level of traffic, and the airspace is still the same to this day, and it can accommodate anybody that wants to come in here, to be honest.
So I'll just echo what Ryan has said, and the planning for this was in the works long before we were building this new facility at the airport. So it's, as Marissa has also said, it's an upgrade and a modernization of technology. So this was not driven by the new terminal or facilities that were being built at the airport.
If I can tag on to what Ian is saying, if anyone is interested in more flights, you should petition the Kansas City Chiefs to absolutely win the Super Bowl, and maybe Kansas City can host the Super Bowl, and that'll probably get more flights in here than the new procedures.
Maybe more than you want, right? So another interesting question overall, is airplane technology making them quieter or louder? Bill, can you take a crack at that?
Thank you, Joe. Yes, all newer aircraft have been becoming more efficient and quieter. And this is as part of the FAA's Office of Environment and Energy. They've worked for more than 50 years with the air carriers and manufacturers to reduce noise at the source, the aircraft engines. Also, there is additional information available at FAA.gov, and please search for the Office of Environment and Energy. Trey?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Solely for Southwest, when you look at our fleet modernization efforts over the last 50 years, we started with obviously 737-200 aircraft, which we've since progressed through the next generation series, and now are incorporating the MAX aircraft. And as that evolution has gone on, aircraft have become significantly quieter over time.
So I'll add one thing to what Trey and Bill have said, is that in addition to the actual engine manufacturers, the actual airplane builders have made strategic changes into the design of aircraft. And that is also as a result of the work by the Office of Environment and Energy, working together with NASA, who does a lot of research into aircraft design. And those things have also helped to make aircraft quieter.
Thank you, guys. That's very, very interesting stuff, isn't it? It really is. So, well, this is interesting too. Now that arrivals have changed, will the FAA change the departure paths? And Casey, are they?
Yeah, Joe, the departure paths are not being changed as part of this project. So they will stay the same as they are today.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So what happens if the satellite network goes down? That we've had kind of a question like that before. What is it? What are the backups in place?
So, Joe, kind of like I alluded to, I think it was 2 or 3 questions ago, the FAA builds redundancies into all of its systems, excuse me. In the rare event that something is not working, we always have a contingency plan in order to meet, whatever that outage is, and maintain the safety of the system itself. Yeah, I got it.
Right.
So again, we practice this every year. Anytime we have a lab down here at the facility itself, where we practice, basically doomsday events, and we practice that every single year, just for instances like this. So.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure I know people are interested in that, because when you make a change, is it going to be safe, right? And that's why we're trying to talk to everybody today. So I want to remind everybody, by the way, if you have questions, enter them in the Zoom question and answer or on social media channels. We'll take the questions as they come in. Okay. Let's see, can you show us one of the procedure boards? I think we could do that. Can you show us one of the procedure boards with the yellow area? It looks like the aircraft will still fly. Will aircraft still fly in that area? It looks like it is. If we could get a board up, Casey, could you talk to that?
Yeah, Joe. So the aircraft ideally will stay on that orange path, the new arrival procedure. but sometimes we will have to take the aircraft off the arrival for a multitude of reasons. Could be weather, traffic, parachute jumping activity to the southwest of the airport. So aircraft will still fly in that yellow area.
Still in the yellow. Okay, thank you. We do use the words that says, I get a question coming in, arrival and approach almost interchangeably, I think and they want to know what is the difference, how these words are used, arrival and approach. Marissa, would you go over that?
So as far as air traffic controllers are concerned, the pilots and the flights that fly have 3 phases of flight. There is a departure phase of flight, which is the aircraft taking off from one airport and getting into the air. The second is an en route phase of flight, which is when the aircraft is leveled off and is traveling from their departure airport to their arrival airport. And then the third phase of flight is arrival, and that is essentially coming out of the en route portion of flight and preparing to land at their arrival destination. And so the procedures that are changing are called standard terminal arrival routes, or you may hear them called STARS. And so this is the procedure that gets the aircraft from the en route portion up at flight levels or thousands of feet in the air and gets them down to make an approach. And an approach is the final 20 or 30 miles that the aircraft and that the pilot takes to land the aircraft. So we have several types of approaches. We have a visual approach, which means the pilot sees the airport and lands visually, or pilots could conduct instrument approaches, which are the Rnav, the required navigation performance approaches, or ILS, instrument landing system approaches. So an approach is just that final phase of flight where the pilot lands the aircraft.
Well, will all aircraft use these procedures?
No, so these approach procedures are specifically designed, these ones that are coming out in the summer are specifically designed for MCI arrivals. And so Trey could probably speak to this a little bit better. I think you have to have special equipment in your aircraft to even be able to do them. So everyone that comes to MCI will not conduct these procedures. So you can still fly into MCI even if your airplane doesn't have the equipment.
Yeah, Trey?
Yeah, Marissa, we certainly do want to use these procedures. All of our airplanes are equipped and all of our pilots are trained to do so. We found that, with the utilization of what you mentioned earlier as Rnp procedures, is that airplanes can, and the reduction in track miles, the reduction in CO2 emissions and noise, and then they get the airplane on the ground quicker. So it's an all-around win when we utilize these procedures. So we certainly do intend to use them as much as meteorological conditions permit.
Well, as long as we're talking about this, we spurred on another question. What about visual procedures? Will the FAA favor the use of these procedures for noise and environmental concerns over visual approaches?
I can jump in and take that. No, we're still going to use visual approaches. I think that we like visual approaches. It gives the pilots a lot of latitude to be able to conduct their approaches however they want to come in. And so we're still going to run air traffic tomorrow as we do today. We will still use visual approaches, but I do know that a lot of Southwest pilots come over and specifically request the Rnp approaches. So sometimes it's really what the pilot requests, what they would like to do, but long story short, we'll use visuals still.
Okay. Again, how do satellite-based procedures enhance safety? I think there's probably a couple of points of view on that. Ryan, would you start?
Sure, Joe. So first and foremost, we like to reduce the communication between the controller and the pilot. We establish procedures to say a lot in very few words, and that's something that we try to do every single day, is say a lot with 1 or 2 words. Secondly, it makes that aircraft position more predictable to us. We know where it's going to be, when it's going to be, and how it's going to be. The greater navigational precision, I guess it'll reduce the variability in how the aircraft will fly to certain paths. And then lastly, and probably even more importantly, it decreases the workload for the controllers during those busier times or spikes in traffic, which is, obviously good for us.
Trey, you fly with this. What difference does it make for you?
Well, I mean, it to Ryan's point, there are significant advances with a reduction in workload and increases in precision. The satellite procedures typically don't have the limitations that, the ground-based conventional procedures have. For example, being a certain distance away from a facility providing a ground-based approach, comes with limitations for distance, whereas satellite reception is highly reliable throughout the multitude of procedures and the distances that they cover. But not only that, I mean, there's actually less steps that we have to go through in general, and the reduction in communication is a win-win between the pilot and the controller, because it reduces both of our workloads, and that increases safety. And just finish up with the Rnp procedures. They're fun to fly. They're good.
So as more and more airports implement satellite-based procedures, will there be system-wide benefits beyond just the local airport? That's a very interesting question. Marissa and Trey, both of you might have perspectives on that.
Sure. So some of the system-wide benefits, first, are environmentally friendly, because the aircraft are moving a little bit more efficiently and are not putting out as many carbon emissions. And so there is an environmental element that these new satellite-based procedures lend to the carbon emissions. But most importantly, for those travelers out there, it gives us fewer delays, really. And so when we're more efficient, when we're able to accurately pinpoint where the aircraft will be, we can time the arrivals a little bit better and get you on the ground and to your vacation a little bit faster.
Trey, when you're flying from one airport to another, one that does not have the procedure versus the other, what's the difference there?
Well, in general, the data that we've seen, on the differences between, say, an Rnp procedure coming off of the downwind versus being vectored for an ILS, when you look at the track mile savings or the data that's presented, it's significant. And as I alluded to earlier, from our standpoint, it really is, if the airplane gets on the ground quicker, we save fuel, we produce less noise, we put less CO2 into the atmosphere, and it's an all-around win for everybody involved.
That's right. Yeah. Well.
So Joe, the other thing I would like to add to it too is it's a more effective use of your airspace when you're able to be more precise in exactly where the airplanes are flying. So especially if I used to work on the East Coast, and in some of those areas you have a lot of traffic. If you think of Philadelphia, New York, Washington airspace, Boston, and they're able to, especially with the newer technology, have aircraft fly more precise approaches. And that also helps, as Marissa said, from an environmental standpoint for noise and emissions. So, I mean, it's a win-win situation for everybody.
And then if I can tag on, after Ian, one of the things that plagues, I think, the air traffic system and airlines is when weather comes through and it creates delays and backups. So when air traffic and pilots are able to be a little bit more efficient and precise and get to our destinations faster, we can kind of play catch up a little bit faster, so we're not as bogged down by weather delays.
Yeah, thanks. So as long as you guys are talking, what about aircraft that are not equipped? How are you going to handle those? Marissa, go ahead and just keep on talking.
So we are going to handle air traffic just as we do now. Like Ryan said, we have plenty of backups and contingency plans. And so if you're not able to use these procedures, that's okay. We will still fit you in. Everyone is welcome to land here, no matter the size of your aircraft, at MCI, or really to come into any of our satellite airports here in the Kansas City area.
Trey, all of your planes are equipped, aren't they?
They are. They're all for our company. Yeah, all of the airplanes are equipped. We do have the OpSpec approval to fly the procedures, as well as all of the pilots are trained to do so.
Well, so Marissa, are these changes permanent, or could we expect changes again, changes on changes?
So the arrivals are planned to be permanent, but as technology changes and things change, there is a possibility that they could be updated or changed in the future. But there have been a lot of effort, a lot of data, and a lot of things that have gone into making these procedures. And so they're planned to be permanent.
Yeah, good, thank you. We kind of want them. So there's a lot to making those changes. Actually, there's a lot to it. So it looks like, here's a question. It looks like these stars tie into approach, but the graphic shows an area of dispersion. Why can't all aircraft stay on the procedure? I don't. Casey, can you? Well, good. There's the board. Casey, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so aircraft can be taken off the procedure for many reasons, including for sequencing. So if you have two aircraft going on the same runway and they're the same distance apart, you got to either create more miles or slow them down. And so some controllers will elect, to just add more miles, and that'll put them into that yellow area. Sometimes it's weather. Sometimes it's just other traffic in the area, like picture takers or parachute jumping. But yeah, sometimes when you got a tie, someone's got to be second.
Okay. Well, Casey, will satellite-based procedures benefit Kansas City downtown and Executive Airport as well?
These new procedures are just for MCI only. So aircraft landing downtown will not utilize these procedures.
Okay, thank you.
But Joe, the one thing too is I want to make sure that those who do use the downtown airport know that this will not have any sort of a negative impact on how they use that airport as well.
That's yeah. I suspect that folks. Is there an overlap between MCI and KCI for utilization? Ian?
I think Trey or Ryan or Casey probably the best people to determine, because they're separate. They keep the aircraft separate for those different airports. So I'll let them answer that one as a technical answer.
I apologize, Joe. I kind of missed the question. What was the question again, sir?
I'm just talking about the interchange between MCI and KCI.
You mean MCI? And yeah, so obviously the two separate airports, we have a requirement to keep them separated. As it relates to downtown arrivals and departures, they will remain the same as they were today. There'll be no changes. We will continuously, and daily separate, customers going into downtown from the customers that are coming to Kansas City International. And like I said, I think it was alluded to already. Only customers wanting to come into Kansas City International will use these particular procedures.
Well, will satellite-based procedures be implemented only at the largest and busiest airports, or are they going to be eventually get to other airports like Kansas City downtown? Ryan, Marissa, or both of you?
So yes and no. I mean, the FAA is going to constantly evolve with new technology. Certainly in these ground-based navigational aids that are becoming, almost antiquated in that they're no longer as usable as they once were. And as these satellite-based tools become available, they'll be implemented all the way throughout the country and all the way through the NAS, just based on a whole host of factors that could do that. So yeah, I would think eventually every airport in the country will have this.
So Ryan, will satellite-based procedures be flown even when the new terminal opens?
Yes, they'll be flown, from the moment we implement them until that first quarter of 2023 when the new terminal opens, and they'll be here, and by then everybody will be extremely used to them. So that's good.
Hopefully, right. I guess we started talking about downtown. We have a question here about it. How is downtown airport being incorporated into these arrivals when MCI lands to the west, and the best runway at MKC is 19? How is and how will MKC traffic be handled? Marissa?
I can explain that. So we're going to still separate our traffic for MCI and for downtown, just as we do today. We're going to do those when the stars or when the when the arrival procedures are implemented. The way the downtown jets will come over will be separated from those MCI arrivals. And usually our en route facility, Kansas City Center, will separate those aircraft. So they are laterally separated and vertically separated. And downtown will probably go direct downtown, and the MCI arrivals will stay on those arrivals that are coming out. So they'll stay separated and everyone will get to their destination as planned.
Excellent. We sure hope, right? So the question here is, I've heard mention of RNP procedures a few times. Is there a difference between RNP procedures and other satellite-based procedures? Marissa, Trey?
Sure. So RNP stands for Required Navigation Performance, and they require very specific aircraft equipment. So the pilots have to have a certain amount of training, and the aircraft has to have a piece of special equipment. Now, there are Rnav GPS approaches that a lot of private pilots have, a lot of business jets have, that are not just airliners that can fly a GPS approach now. So there is a slight difference, and Trey could probably speak to those differences.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the two types, the Rnav GPS procedures, just exactly what you said, Marissa, is that you find these, they're very common around the National Airspace System. A lot of general aviation airplanes, all the way up to and including airliners, are equipped to fly Rnav GPS procedures. When you proceed into RNP, there are additional requirements that the airplane has to have additional equipment. So we have to have onboard performance monitoring and alerting to the crew. There is a very specific pilot training requirement for these procedures, and the automation has to be able to handle certain aspects of the procedures, like we talked about, for example, radius to fix, or just flying the radius legs that you showed on some of your flight boards. And as earlier, we do have the operation specification approval to do that with those procedures. And what the RNP procedures offer is, for the approach to a runway, is tighter tolerances, if you will, than just your normal Rnav GPS procedures will afford.
Good, thank you. Well, we have a specifically now, I'm going to go back to Ryan and Marissa again here. How do these procedures affect us general aviation folks?
I'll hop out there, Marissa. So it doesn't really affect the general aviation population, in that we will still provide the same services that we provide today, whether that's VFR flight following, If somebody wants to come into the airspace and shoot practice approaches at the multitude of satellite airports in the airspace that we have here, we will continue to provide that service and do it happily. Even if you want to come up here to MCI, we would love to have you come up here to MCI, shoot some approaches, hang out in the pattern, whatever you want to do. So to the GA community, general aviation community out there, come on in. We're ready and we're willing, and you know, we'll have a good old time.
I'm sure you would too. So Ryan, let me get a question too. That's probably right. You should be talking to is, what is the FAA's ultimate goal here? Are we moving away from ground-based navigation aids, VORs, NDBs, et cetera, and moving towards satellite-based navigation, GPS, RNP? Furthermore, how does this benefit the traveling public, airspace, airlines, and the environment?
Sure, Joe. So first and foremost, the FAA is working towards modernizing what we call the National Airspace System. And we're always out to provide the most efficient routing for aircraft from point A to point B. That's typically going to be a combination of your ground-based and satellite-based navigation. The use of satellite-based navigation, you know, ultimately reduces, and we've talked about this a couple of times, those carbon emissions. So yeah, we're going to work towards modernizing the National Airspace System and be at the forefront of any emerging technology that comes out that allows us to do that.
Okay. So we're getting real specific again here. Does this mean that Bramer 7, Jayhawk 6, Jason 1, and Tiger 6 arrivals will be going away? Casey, are they going to go away?
The conventional approaches will go away. Jason 1 will be amended, I believe. So that is our only Rnav approach right now, because Robson VOR was decommissioned. So the conventional arrivals will be canceled.
Interesting. I wonder who Jayhawk 6, I don't know who that was named after, but that's pretty interesting, right?
Don't get me started, Joe.
Okay. Okay, final question for the panelists. How do you know the new procedures will be safe? How do you know?
Great question. If I could just jump right out there and say a lot of work has gone into the production of these arrivals. This is not something that we just came up with last week and air traffic just said, okay, here you go, pilots, we're going to fly something new. They've been through a lot of offices. There have been a lot of questions. There have been a lot of conferences and calls about the new procedures. And so the FAA is really taking their time and updating these. We've been trying to work on these new arrival procedures for, I would say, a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And so just from my point of view, the testing that has gone through, anything that the FAA does, we're going to consider safety. And so,
if I could add one thing real quick, you know, from controller's perspective, in the downwinds, the aircraft that can use these procedures will fly track, so they won't be, you know, it's on a heading that can be affected by wind. So it's that more predictable path that we've been, you know, talking about earlier. So we'll know exactly, you know, we draw a straight line all the way to Iowa or Arkansas, and they'll be on that track until we turn them.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll just follow up with is certainly, you know, the FAA's motto or creed or whatever you want to call it is to operate the safest and most efficient airspace in all of the world, and we live by that, and it's undebatable that we do that on a daily basis. You know, the FAA is going to turn a critical eye anytime that safety is compromised in any manner whatsoever. They're going to turn a critical eye and do everything they can to make sure that it remains safe and there's not a degradation from that safety. I think what we're talking about here today is the efficiency piece of it, is this allows us to become more efficient with getting the passengers and our customers from point A to point B.
Joe, I'll add another thing to this. I mean, I've been involved in aviation for a little more than 30 years, and I've been involved with the FAA on a couple of advisory panels. And as Ryan has said, I mean, the FAA is always looking at making enhancements to the way they use the national airspace to make it more efficient and make it safer. They're also looking at the environmental benefits from all of this research that is being done by the different departments within the FAA, so that the people who are also around airports and, as Marissa said, en route and all of these things, so that the efficiency in terms of less fuel burn, the same way we said earlier with the airplane manufacturers and the engine manufacturers, we're always trying to enhance the way we do business in aviation. And therefore, I'm very comfortable that whenever they put in procedures, they're trying to make sure that it's more environmentally friendly. And as everybody has said, safety is the number one requirement with anything that's being done from an FAA perspective. And I'm very comfortable with that as an airport operator.
Well, thank you all. But you know what, I said your last question, one came in, pretty specific question, and I think I don't want to let it go. Which GA, IFR, GPS units can fly RNP approaches, or are they just for airlines to use? Are these RNPs different than the normal Rnav approaches or STAR DPS? Somebody knows their acronyms, a lot of other people don't. So would you take a crack at that a little bit, try and answer that, Ryan and Trey, both really?
I'm going to defer to Trey on this one because there is a lot of acronyms in there. Not that I don't know what they are. However, I think Trey would be the best person to answer a lot of that.
That's fine,
From
yeah.
a pilot perspective.
Now, I can tell you that that my Cessna in my flying club does not have that. And I really don't know, and I can't speak to the avionics of general aviation airplanes that utilize this procedure. I mean, I could speak to our avionics, but I would say that a good first step to looking into this would be, there's an advisory circular for our RNP approaches, and it's AC 90 I think it's 101 alpha, if I'm not mistaken. So I'd start there, and I would also check with the avionics manufacturers for some of these Garmin or Universal or equipment of that nature to do your research, if they even provide equipment capable of these procedures.
Thanks, Trey. And I want to thank all of you. We're coming to the end of our workshop. So thank everybody on the panel and all of you for attending. We got some really good questions. I hope our answers were informative. Thank the specialists for taking their time this evening to spend the time with us to answer these questions. I think it's been informative. I've enjoyed it, and I hope you have. So on behalf of all of the panelists and the FAA, thank you for joining us.
Go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs. Absolutely.